Operations for Franklin Community Schools, and we're glad you're here this morning. I'm going to introduce Dr. David Clendenning, Superintendent of Franklin Schools, who is going to give us an update on our latest round of samples at Needham and Webb Elementaries. And Jeff Carnahan, President of Enviroforensics, will talk to us in more detail about that. And then Mayor Barnett and Casey McFall from Enviroforensics are here to give us an update on the efforts the city is making to help the schools with this topic. And with that, I'm going to welcome Dr. Clendenning.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Thank you to everyone for coming out this morning to Franklin Schools. It's the Monday after spring break, and we're all in session. We are very excited and glad that could be stated. Before we get started today with the information about Webb and Needham Elementaries, I do want to thank all the partners that participated over the last several days to provide wisdom and counsel to me as we made the decisions. I made the decision to come back to school. And I would just start off by saying the schools are in session. Attendance is good, both for students and faculty. So we're pleased with that. It is, I feel comfortable telling you it's a safe place. We received the data back from our experts, and after consultation with many other experts, we were able to say that the indoor air is safe and we can begin school. So let's just talk about the last few days for Franklin Schools and what did that look like for us? As you all know, we received data back before spring break, and we did have an e-learning day on that Thursday to allow our partners in enviroforensics to come in and begin testing. And over the weekend, they did start that testing, and as the data started to come in from Tuesday through Thursday afternoon, we were able to evaluate and look at the information that was available to us. And during that monitoring, we did take 44 indoor air samples. And when all of those came back non-detect, and our Mr. Carnahan will go into detail about that in just a few minutes. In addition, we continued to do the paired sampling effect for both Needham and Webb Elementaries with 7 subsoil samples at Webb and 10 at Needham. After reviewing the data, we did send information out to everyone on Thursday to announce that we're continuing to look at the information. And then Friday around 1 o'clock, we were able to release the information. And the reason we did that on Friday was to make sure that we had everything in order. We wanted to be transparent. We wanted our parents to understand that it's a safe place. We go back to our guiding principles, and trust is a dominant one. We have 5 of them, and trust is one of them. We wanted to make sure that our parents clearly understood the data, clearly understood our perspective, and that's why we released it at the time that we did. I'm happy to say that the information allows us also to continue to focus on being innovative and student-centered. And what does that mean? Well, after receiving the data, the decision was made that the Franklin Schools will continue to monitor, and we are going to be preemptive. We're going to continue to provide a safe, secure learning environment for our students, just like it is today, by introducing a depressurization system in the next few weeks as we continue to move forward. And as that gets in place, we'll continue to monitor after that. So I think parents can understand, the community understand that we are taking a lead. We understand that this is a community concern. We want to make sure that everybody understands that our students are safe. As I said last conference to you, obviously it's personal. As a dad of students that have gone through our school, also employees, we want to make sure that everybody's safe because that's what's important, and we're going to continue to do that. With that, I'm going to pause for just a second and introduce Mr. Jeff Carnahan, who is the president of Enviroforensics, and he's going to give details on the process and data that we received. And we will come back at the end of the conversations for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Good morning. Following the receipt of subslab vapor samples from beneath the floors of Needham and Webb Elementary Schools that showed PCE and TCE above screening levels, another round of sampling was performed last week that included indoor air samples outdoor air samples, sub-slab vapor samples, and air samples collected from within the floor drains of both schools. The results of indoor air sampling have been received, and none of those samples contained detectable concentrations of PCE, TCE, or any other chemical of concern. 2 different indoor air sampling approaches were implemented to get a better understanding of air quality in the buildings. The first was the collection of indoor air samples over a period of 8 hours during representative school hours on March 23rd. A total of 12 indoor air samples were collected from Webb, and a total of 10 indoor air samples were collected from Needham over the 8-hour period. These 8-hour samples were intended to give us a picture of indoor air quality during daytime school hours. The results of the 8-hour indoor air sampling events at both schools showed that samples contained no PCE, TCE, or any other chemical of concern. The collection of 24-hour indoor air samples was then initiated on the morning of March 24th. The 24-hour samples were collected so that the results could be compared to the levels deemed safe by the IDEM and the EPA, which are based on a hypothetical exposure of this time duration. Again, a total of 12 indoor air samples were collected from Webb, and a total of 10 indoor air samples were collected from Needham over that 24-hour period. The results of the 24-hour indoor air samples contained no PCE, TCE, or any other chemical of concern. The applicable health-based screening level for TCE in indoor air is 2.1 micrograms per cubic meter, and for PCE is 42 micrograms per cubic meter. None of the indoor air samples collected from Needham or Webb contained any PCE or TCE. Outdoor air samples were collected at each school during each indoor air sampling event, which were also non-detect. The 24-hour indoor air sampling event was paired with another round of sub-slab vapor sampling conducted on March 25th. The results of this sub-slab sampling event were similar to those from the March 9th event, although the detected concentrations of PCE and TCE were lower overall. In Webb, where there were previously 3 exceedances of the sub-slab vapor screening level for TCE, the most recent sampling results contained only 2. In Needham, below Needham, where there were previously 2 exceedances of the sub-slab screening level for TCE, the most recent sampling results contained none. Again, the conservative residential sub-slab vapor screening level for TCE is 70 micrograms per cubic meter. There were no exceedances of this screening level from beneath Needham. The 2 exceeding values of TCE from beneath Webb were 97.8 and 105 micrograms per cubic meter. None of the sub-slab vapors collected from beneath Needham or Webb contained concentrations of PCE above the residential screening level of 1,400 micrograms per cubic meter. In response to concerns about the potential for nearby sewers to be acting as pathways for vapors that could migrate from off-site sources, all accessible floor drains inside both Webb and Needham were screened with field equipment for the presence of volatile compounds. The results showed that only one of the air samples collected from within the floor drains contained any chemicals of concern, which was 9.9 micrograms per cubic meter of PCE from the sample collected from a faculty bathroom floor drain. These results demonstrate that vapors from the floor drains are not impacting the indoor air quality of the schools. To be safe, Franklin Community Schools has either plugged or installed one-way vapor valves on all drains in both schools. We'll be looking forward to seeing the results of the sewer investigations being conducted outside of the schools and nearby sewer corridors by the City of Franklin and the IDEM. Again, the combined results of this sampling event demonstrate that the indoor air in Needham and Webb buildings contain no detectable concentrations of TCE or PCE, and they both pass applicable screening criteria for residential occupation. Given the continued presence of TCE and PCE in vapors beneath the floors of Webb and Needham, an additional indoor air sampling event, and the proactive installation of sub-slab depressurization systems at both schools, have been recommended as additional measures of safety. Immediate steps are being taken by the school corporation to prepare for this work. Additionally, Franklin schools will continue to operate the air conditioning units with increased fresh air and positive indoor air pressure settings for as long as it's necessary. Thank you. I'd like to pass the podium to Mayor Barnett.
Good morning. It is good to be here today with our community partners, Franklin Community School Corporation. It is good to know that our schools are safe. We strive to work with our partners to make sure that they're safe. We've also partnered with IDEM and EPA. This has been going on, the investigation, since last July. I will say, when if it was your child brought the report to us that they had found some concerning levels in 3 homes, and at that point I partnered with the school, and we met with IDEM, and EPA agreed to come to Franklin and do additional testing, and that's been going on since I think August. The schools hired EnviroForensic to do additional testing at the schools, which come back with no detects and good results. At that point, we hired EnviroForensic to do some testing around the Amphenol site and work with EPA. And the EPA has identified some contamination that we are getting ready to mitigate. We'll have further announcements on that in the coming 2 months. I would believe that we'd get started with that. But in the meantime, there's been other testing by IDEM all over the city of Franklin. Other entities have did testing with no detects, but we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're very proactive. The school's proactive, the city's proactive, and we're going to get to the bottom of this till we feel like that we've mitigated all that can be mitigated. We're a very, like I said, a proactive community. We're a close-knit community. Growing up here in Franklin myself, it is personal, as Dr. Clendenning said. My wife and I both went to Webb Elementary. My kids went to Webb Elementary. My granddaughter went to Needham Elementary, and she is there today as a cadet teacher. She's a senior in high school, and she's at Needham today. So very proud of all of our kids that go there. We're a tight community, and we're going to make sure that this is a safe community. Moving forward, we're not ready to say we're done. We're not done. We're not going to be done until we're safe and proven that we're safe and we're headed in the right direction. We have partnered up again with EnviroForensic to do the off-site testing to see where any kind of contamination could be coming from. We don't have that yet, but Casey McFall, who's the field specialist, is here to talk to us about that at this point. So, Casey.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, the City of Franklin retained EnviroForensics to conduct an investigation of the Eastview Drive sewer system to see if there was a connection between the sewer and the elevated subslab results observed underneath Needham and Webb schools. EnviroForensics is conducting this work in collaboration with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. The investigation area begins at the Hurricane Road Eastview Drive intersection in the vicinity of the RCO Reed and former Hoagland Cannery facilities. Both sites are currently conducting environmental investigations under IDEM's state cleanup program. The sanitary sewer main flows to the southeast along the southern drive of Eastview Drive, crossing Hurricane Creek, at which point it turns due south and runs along the eastern portions of Needham and Webb Elementary School properties. The sewer main services the Needham School, but is not directly connected to Webb. On Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, EnviroForensics installed 6 soil gas sampling points within the backfill of the sanitary sewer main. This work is similar in nature to the work we did last September when the city hired us to evaluate releases near the Amphenol site. The sampling points are spread all along our investigation area from outside the former Hoagland facility to the elementary schools. Due to the amount of rain we received last week, we could not collect the soil gas samples. If the current forecast of dry weather holds, we'll be able to collect these samples on Wednesday of this week. Additionally, on Wednesday of last week, IDEM and Enviroforensics deployed air canisters within the sanitary sewer through existing manholes on Eastview Drive, Upper Shelbyville Road, and on the school properties. The canisters collected air samples over a 24-hour period, after which they were retrieved and submitted for laboratory analysis. We anticipate receiving the data later this week. Once we receive soil gas and sewer air data, we can then advise the city on additional follow-up work required to complete the investigation and assess potential sources of VOC released into the environment.
Okay, at this time, I'll invite Dr. Glendenning and Mr. Carnahan to address your questions.
We also ask the mayor to come on.
Is he still here? Sure.
Mayor Barnett, I wanted to ask you first. A few months ago, you said that basically you had characterized this site and how much contamination there was. Since that time, we've seen the EPA come out with a plume that's spread off of the Amphenol site. We've had other issues of contamination involving Reed. And now we have had these numbers fluctuating with the schools. What do you say now about the situation here in Franklin and the amount and extent of this contamination?
Well, I don't know that we know the extent of this situation, and that's why EPA and IDEM and Enviroforensic is doing further testing.
So is that a change then from your last statement? And
I think it is. I think it has been characterized. It's in an area at one point at where we're at right now is where we're focusing on. And if our investigation leads us further, that's where we'll go.
Your reaction to hearing last week, we know you were not in town, but decided that there should be the sewer testing. Your reaction in learning about these numbers at these two elementary schools.
Right. I learned the numbers before I left town, and we hired Enviroforensic before we left town and met with the school, our partners in this, before we left town. And we are glad to hear that we have good results and our schools are safe.
This might be a question for Enviroforensics. When you're looking at the residential screening levels, can you clarify, does that account for a difference between a child's body versus an adult's body? Because certainly, a child's a lot smaller. Is there a difference in the levels a child can tolerate versus a grown person? Or do those residential screening limits account for both of those?
The residential screening levels are not based on a child exposure. However, the residential exposure limits are used because they're overly conservative. The residential exposure levels are based on a lifetime of exposure for several hours throughout the day, most of the day at home. So the fact that the children are being exposed for only a short duration during that time period is why they're considered overly conservative by the IDEM and the EPA.
Can you guarantee that kids are safe in these classrooms?
I can guarantee that the collected samples that have been taken based on the IDEM and the EPA methodologies, in order to be able to compare them to the health-based screening levels created by those entities, those samples were non-detect for any PCE, TCE, or any other volatile compound of concern.
When we're talking about the sub-slab results that you received, you've mentioned that there were 2 exceedances again at Webb. Were these in different classrooms or the same ones that tested high before?
Right. They were different classrooms. I would need to look at this specifically, but generally speaking, the overall concentrations in the subslab decreased. But there was some variation among the subslab sampling points of which ones were above and which ones were below. So the mitigation system that's being designed and considered and we're moving forward with is designed to include the entire slab. Okay, so it'll address the entire sub-slab space.
But now with 5 classroom areas or places within that school that have tested, does that cause more concern that it's not just in one area, but you're finding it in different places?
Well, we're finding it within different places beneath the subslab or, nearby places. But the indoor air samples, that's taken on average of the entire indoor air space.
Would you say the indoor air results are a result of not having people in the building, perhaps airing out the building all week, and you have the air conditioning units going? So that would impact what the results actually would be when you went back into test.
Well, the indoor samples were collected under standard methods and procedures that are dictated by guidance by the IDEM and the EPA. You do want to eliminate any outdoor sources that potentially are coming in. So that's why those sampling conditions were established that way.
How quickly do you plan on getting the depressurization system?
We're going to get it as quickly as we can. Obviously, there's some things that we need to do as far as going through the process to get it created, also with regard to the board and the procedure for purchasing. But our goal is to get it as soon as we can and continue to move forward. And additionally, we will continue to monitor before that.
How much does something like this cost?
That's a good question. Our estimates are over between $300,000 in that range. Obviously, we'll look to the bids when they come in and different things like that. But obviously, our issue is not cost. Our issue is safety for our kids and ensuring that we are being proactive and innovative. And I believe that the mitigation that we have been doing and continuing to do with the drains, that indicates that we're going to do that. So this is not a cost issue for us. It really is about ensuring safety for our kids. And I am pleased with the steps that we're taking.
In your opinion, is there still a problem at Needham and Webb that needs addressed?
I am comfortable with the data that we received. I look to our experts to know their procedures and protocols. And as I said last time, I'm an expert in education. And I will continue to look at that. So when I look at the data, I am very comfortable with that. The students are going to continue to go to school there. The faculty will continue to go to school there. And we'll look forward to a successful end of the year.
What do you tell parents? One of the things we tell parents is, we got this data saying, we have to keep our kids home. Now we're told, okay, everything's okay. But then we're also taking these extra steps. So how are we supposed to feel safe sending our kids to school? What is your message to those parents who still have those concerns?
Yeah, I would, my message would be one of calm and trust. Those two things I think resonate well with us. Go back to that Thursday where we decided e-learning day. I wanted to be aggressive and preemptive to get the data so that we could do some things over the break if we needed to do. And that's what we needed to do to ensure that calm and trust with parents. I'll continue to provide transparency with what's going on in the data. And tonight we are having a parent and guardian meeting for those two schools where we're going to answer questions around that to kind of ensure them along the way. And we'll continue to be open with what we're doing and next steps. Our guiding principles I go back to is individual student growth and communication and collaboration. And that collaboration is all of us. It's all the community. The mayor spoke about it, but it's also about mom and dad. And to the parents, I would say we're looking for that partnership, looking to ensure that we are providing a safe, secure learning environment, and we'll continue to do that.
Dr. Clinton, just to follow up on that, the actual first results were on March 9th, right? Correct? They were.
No, the testing was March 9th.
The testing what?
The testing was March 9th. We received the data back.
The Thursday when school was out.
We got them that, I believe Wednesday was when we received it. We tested on March 9th.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. That's good for clarification.
How common, when we're talking about the sub-slab results here, can you kind of characterize, is this uncommon for schools to have results like this, or is this something you have seen in other school districts or have done work with other school districts?
Yeah, we actually have represented schools or worked with other schools to make sure that their subslab vapor concentration problems that are taken care of. And we've seen in the past that by the installation of a subslab depressurization system, the indoor air concentrations were able to be at safe levels. The last time we did one of these, we actually had indoor air concentrations that we were really concerned about, that we got down to below screening levels.
How often should you be testing? Because we know that results do fluctuate with the weather. And we could have a non-detect today, and next week numbers could be something different. How do you reassure parents that you're not just going off of these results and going forward? I mean,
Right.
how much testing really needs to be done?
Well, I think that the timing is such that we certainly are looking for another testing event before the end of school. One of the other things to consider here is that there are a couple of mitigation measures that have already been enacted. You mentioned about the positive pressure inside the school, the adjustments to the HVAC system. The real purpose of doing that is to create that positive pressure inside the schools and keep any subslab vapors out. So then what we're doing now as we design this subslab system is to create that negative pressure beneath the floor so that it enhances that effect. Also, the blocking of the drains with the vapor locks and the plugs, that also has stopped that pathway, regardless of what those sewer results come back next week. So all of those things have to be considered as far as the timing goes. But on a monthly basis, one more time before the end of school, seems in this situation to make a lot of sense.
Is it
Thank you for your questions. I think we're finished.
Can I finish my last question?
Thank you for your questions. You can submit additional questions through Robin Betts, our media director, and we appreciate you coming. Thank you.